The engine hummed a steady rhythm, the late afternoon sun glinting off the hood of my truck as I turned onto the familiar, unpaved stretch of road. It wasn't exactly a grand entrance, but this humble dirt track was my private access, the only way to my newly acquired property, a small, secluded plot where I was finally going to build the workshop I'd dreamed of for years. Today was a big day, the first delivery of lumber, massive treated beams that would form the backbone of my project was due any minute. I checked my watch, a flicker of excitement mixed with the usual pre-delivery nerves. But then I saw it. About 50 yards up, right where the road narrowed slightly, a bright red SUV was parked squarely across the path, completely blocking any passage. My foot instinctively eased off the gas. What on earth? I thought. My private road wasn't a shortcut for local traffic, and there was no reason for anyone to be parked there. As I slowly approached, I noticed a figure standing beside the SUV, arms crossed, facing my direction. Even from a distance, the posture screamed, confrontation. It was Karen. I'd seen her before, a few houses down on the main street where my access road branched off. She had the classic bob, meticulously styled, and a gaze that could curdle milk. We'd exchanged brief, obligatory waves, but never spoken. Now, her face was set in a hard line, eyes narrowed as if she were personally offended by my very existence on this road. I pulled up, stopping a safe distance behind her SUV, and rolled down my window. "Excuse me," I called out, trying to sound polite despite the irritation bubbling up inside me. "Is there a problem? I have a delivery coming through here any minute." Karen didn't move. She just stared, her eyes raking over my truck, then me, as if assessing a particularly offensive bug. "Problem?" she finally scoffed, her voice sharp, cutting through the quiet afternoon air. "The problem, sir, is you." My politeness began to fray. "Me? What are you talking about? This is my private access road." She laughed, a short, humorless sound that grated on my ears. "Your private road? Oh, how quaint. This, young man, is my private road. And these deliveries of yours, they are unauthorized. They are disturbing the peace, and frankly, they are ruining the aesthetic of my property." Her arm swept dramatically towards her meticulously manicured lawn, as if my truck, patiently waiting, was a blight upon her perfect world. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice even. "Ma'am, with all due respect, you're mistaken. I own the property this road leads to, and this is the designated access point. I have every right to be here, and so do my deliveries." "Right?" She practically shrieked, taking a step closer, her voice rising in pitch. "You think you have a right to turn my quiet private lane into some kind of industrial thoroughfare? I've lived here for 20 years. This road has always been private. My private road, and I won't have it." She tapped her foot impatiently, then gestured dismissively at the space behind my truck. "Now, I suggest you turn around. There will be no deliveries. Not today, not ever." My jaw tightened. The lumber truck, probably a massive flatbed, would be navigating tight turns just to get here. Turning around on this narrow dirt road with a large vehicle was a monumental pain, let alone an 18-wheeler. This wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a deliberate, audacious blockade. "Look, Karen," I said, using her first name, hoping to inject a touch of reason. "I understand you might be misinformed, but I have the documentation. This road is part of my property's easement. It's legal access." Her eyes narrowed to slits. "Documentation? Easement? Don't insult my intelligence. I know my property lines. You're trespassing, and if that truck even dares to come down this road, I'm calling the sheriff. In fact," she pulled out her phone, already dialing, "I'm calling them right now. This is a clear case of illegal activity on my property." My phone buzzed in my pocket. The lumber company. "We're about 5 minutes out, boss. See you soon." The driver's cheerful voice boomed. I looked from my phone to Karen, who was now mid-rant to what sounded like a dispatcher. Her SUV remained a solid, unyielding barrier. There was no reasoning with her, not in this state. The last thing I needed was a confrontation with law enforcement over a misunderstanding she created, especially with a massive delivery looming. "Fine," I said, my voice low, a promise hidden beneath the resignation. "You win this round, Karen, but this isn't over." I put my truck in reverse, the gravel crunching under the tires, and slowly, painstakingly backed all the way out to the main road. Just as I turned off, I saw the lumber truck, a behemoth of wood and steel, trying to make the turn onto my now-blocked access. I waved them down, shaking my head. Karen stood there, hands on her hips, watching me retreat, a smug, victorious smile slowly spreading across her face. She clearly believed she had won. But as I explained the situation to the bewildered truck driver, rescheduling the delivery for another day, a new determination solidified within me. She had no idea how wrong she was, and I was about to show her, in no uncertain terms, just how wrong. The sting of that first encounter with Karen lingered, a mix of pure frustration and indignant disbelief. Rescheduling the lumber delivery had been a hassle, costing me time and money, but the real cost was the gnawing feeling of being unjustly pushed around on what I knew, deep down, was my property. Karen's smug, triumphant grin as I backed away had ignited a quiet, simmering resolve within me. This wasn't just about a road anymore, it was about principle. The very next morning, armed with a fresh cup of coffee and a determination to leave, no stone unturned, I plunged into the labyrinthine world of local property records. My initial research began online, poring over the county's GIS maps and assessors' databases. I found my parcel, confirmed the boundary lines, and then zoomed in on the thin, gray line representing the access road. It was clearly demarcated, leading directly to my property. But what was its official status? Was it truly a private road, dedicated solely to my parcel, or was there some older, shared agreement I wasn't aware of? The digital records provided a good starting point, confirming my ownership of the land itself, but the specific legal nuances of the access road required a deeper dive. That afternoon, I made the trip to the county clerk's office, a place that felt like a relic from another era, filled with dusty binders and the hushed whispers of bureaucracy. I presented my property's parcel number and the original deed, explaining my inquiry about the access road. The clerk, a kind woman with an encyclopedic knowledge of local land history, pointed me towards a series of large, bound volumes labeled Easements and Rights of Way. Hours melted away as I meticulously scanned through pages, cross-referencing dates, names, and property descriptions. I traced the lineage of my property back through several owners, each transaction hinting at the road's history. And then, there it was. Not a hidden secret, but a perfectly clear, legally binding document, dated decades ago, explicitly establishing an exclusive and perpetual easement for access to my parcel, specifically describing the very road Karen now claimed as her own. My eyes traced the precise dimensions, the detailed plat map, and the unequivocal language. This easement granted. The owner of my parcel, me, full, unobstructed right of passage. The wording was airtight, leaving no room for ambiguity. It wasn't just a right-of-way, it was literally a part of my property's legal framework, owned by the person who owned the land it served. The aha moment wasn't a sudden jolt, but a slow, building wave of vindication that washed over me. It was like piecing together a complex puzzle and finally seeing the complete picture. The puzzle pieces weren't just the legal jargon, they were also Karen's previous interactions. In hindsight, her casual waves had always felt a little strained, her glances a little too sharp. This wasn't a new issue for her, she just hadn't found the right target until now. In the days that followed my discovery, armed with printed copies of deeds, the easement document, and the official county map, Karen's harassment, far from diminishing, only seemed to intensify, fueled by my perceived retreat from our first clash. She clearly saw my backing down as a victory, an admission of guilt on my part. Now, instead of just blocking the road, her actions became a series of escalating, petty annoyances. Every morning, I'd find an array of her yard waste: dead leaves, pruned branches, even some half-eaten birdseed, strategically placed just inside what she thought was her property line, but which was actually the very edge of my easement, forcing me to either drive over it or get out and move it. I started seeing her standing by her window, stopwatch in hand, whenever a contractor or even a friend drove down the road, clearly timing their disruptive presence. The peak of her absurdity came when she actually installed a small plastic private property sign, crudely spray-painted right in the middle of my easement. It was comical, pathetic, and infuriating all at once. My initial anger had slowly transformed into a steely resolve, now mixed with a dash of strategic patience. I knew I had the law on my side, and more importantly, I had the undeniable paperwork to prove it. Each petty act of Karen's, each unwarranted glare, each muttered insult I overheard from her yard, only reinforced my decision to not just resolve this, but to resolve it definitively. I wouldn't just assert my rights, I would demonstrate them, in a way that left no room for doubt or further argument. The next time a delivery was scheduled, I wouldn't just be waiting. I'd be prepared. Karen had no idea the full weight of legal ownership and the unwavering resolve of someone pushed too far was about to come crashing down on her carefully constructed world of misguided entitlement. The quiet calm of the easement was about to be broken by a very loud, very clear message. The day of the rescheduled lumber delivery dawned clear and crisp, but beneath the calm sky, a storm was brewing. One Karen, in her blissful ignorance, was completely unprepared. For I had purposely ordered the same large flatbed truck, anticipating her reaction, and I was not disappointed. As the familiar rumble of the diesel engine grew louder, approaching the turn onto my access road, Karen emerged from her house, a triumphant glint in her eye, already halfway to positioning her ubiquitous red SUV directly in the truck's path. This time, however, I was not in my truck. I was already standing by the edge of my easement, a large, official-looking envelope held conspicuously in my hand. Her steps faltered slightly as she saw me, not in my vehicle but waiting for her, an unusual calm radiating from me that seemed to disarm her usual aggression. "Oh, you again," she sneered, her voice dripping with condescension as the massive lumber truck slowed to a crawl behind me, its air brakes hissing softly. "Didn't we settle this? I told you, no unauthorized vehicles on my private road. Call them off, or I'm calling the sheriff again. They'll be here faster this time, I assure you." She already had her phone clutched in her hand, her finger hovering over the screen. The trucker, sensing the impending drama, wisely kept a respectful distance, engine idling. I simply smiled, a genuine, unhurried smile that seemed to confuse her further. "Actually, Karen," I began, my voice steady and clear, carrying easily across the quiet expanse, "we're not going to need the sheriff, because this time we're going to settle this for good, and I promise you, you're not going to like the outcome." Her confident smirk began to waver, replaced by a flicker of irritation. "What are you talking about? Are you threatening me? This is my property," she retorted, her voice rising in pitch, her eyes darting nervously towards the approaching truck, which was now clearly waiting for my signal. It was time. I calmly reached into the envelope and pulled out the crisp official documents, a certified copy of the easement deed, clearly stamped and dated by the county, and a professionally printed plat map, highlighting in stark red the precise boundaries of the easement, clearly showing it encompassing the entire access road leading to my property. I unfolded them slowly, deliberately, giving her time to process what she was seeing. "Karen," I said, extending the map towards her, though she made no move to take it. "This is the legal document that confirms what I tried to tell you last week. This road, the one you've been calling your private road, is actually an exclusive and perpetual easement. And guess what? This easement is legally tied to my property. It means I, as the owner of the dominant estate, have the sole right to use it for access. And not just access, but full and unobstructed access. I paused, letting the words sink in, meaning it's effectively my road to use, and you have no legal right to block it. Her face was a masterpiece of escalating emotions. First, disbelief. Her eyebrows furrowed, her lips slightly parted in confusion. Then, anger. A flush crept up her neck, her eyes blazing as if I were personally insulting her intelligence. "That's a lie. That's fake. You can't just make up documents," she practically screamed, her voice cracking with fury. "I've lived here for 20 years. This is my property line. I know my rights." She gestured wildly towards the dirt road, as if her decades of residence somehow superseded documented property law. "No, Karen," I countered, my tone firm, cutting through her increasingly shrill protestations. "It's not fake. This is a certified copy from the county records office. You can go down there yourself and verify it. It's all publicly accessible. And frankly, your 20 years of living here doesn't change a single legal fact about property ownership. This easement was established long before you moved here. And if you look closely," I pointed a finger directly at the red line, "on the map, your property line actually ends here, well before this road. You've been living next to, and claiming ownership of, a road that has always been part of my property's legal access." The fight seemed to drain out of her for a moment, replaced by a stunned silence. Her eyes, wide and unfocused, darted between the official seals on the document and the highlighted path on the map. The smugness had completely vanished, replaced by a dawning horror, a palpable embarrassment. She mumbled something inaudible, her jaw slack. The truck driver behind me gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement of the unfolding drama. "So," I continued, pressing my advantage calmly but definitively, "from now on, this road is to remain completely clear. No more blockages, no more interference with deliveries, no more calling authorities on my contractors or me. If you or your vehicle obstruct this easement again, I will have no choice but to involve the authorities myself, and the consequences for you will be far more serious than a simple inconvenience. You will be obstructing legal access, and that is a matter the Sheriff's Department and potentially legal counsel will take very seriously." I let the weight of my words hang in the air, allowing her to fully grasp the shift in power. Karen looked utterly defeated. Her shoulders slumped, and her face, usually so rigid with self-importance, crumpled. She turned, without a word, and, slowly, dejectedly, walked back to her red SUV. With a sigh that sounded more like a deflating balloon, she got in, started the engine, and with a surprisingly quiet reverence, slowly drove forward, clearing the path completely. The way was open. The lumber truck, after a moment of hesitation, began to roll forward, its mighty engine now sounding like a triumphant roar. As it passed Karen's SUV, I could see her still sitting there, staring straight ahead, defeated and utterly humiliated. This wasn't just a cleared road. It was a clear victory, a precise, undeniable dismantling of her misguided sense of entitlement. The immediate aftermath of the confrontation was a palpable, almost eerie calm. With Karen's SUV finally moved, and her bluster deflated, the lumber truck rolled triumphantly down the easement, its massive load a visual testament to my victory. Unloading the beams, setting up the initial framework for my workshop, and seeing the first tangible progress on my property felt like a liberation. There was a quiet satisfaction in every hammer blow, every precise measurement. For the first few days, the road remained blissfully clear. Deliveries came and went without a hitch, and I found myself relaxing into the rhythm of construction, the constant low-level stress of Karen's interference finally gone. It was a peace I hadn't realized. I was missing until it returned. And I was about to show her, in no uncertain terms, just how wrong. The sting of that first encounter with Karen lingered, a mix of pure frustration and indignant disbelief. Rescheduling the lumber delivery had been a hassle, costing me time and money, but the real cost was the gnawing feeling of being unjustly pushed around on what I knew, deep down, was my property. Karen's smug, triumphant grin as I backed away had ignited a quiet, simmering resolve within me. This wasn't just about a road anymore, it was about principle. The very next morning, armed with a fresh cup of coffee and a determination to leave, no stone unturned, I plunged into the labyrinthine world of local property records. My initial research began online, poring over the county's GIS maps and assessors' databases. I found my parcel, confirmed the boundary lines, and then zoomed in on the thin, gray line representing the access road. It was clearly demarcated, leading directly to my property. But what was its official status? Was it truly a private road, dedicated solely to my parcel, or was there some older, shared agreement I wasn't aware of? The digital records provided a good starting point, confirming my ownership of the land itself, but the specific legal nuances of the access road required a deeper dive. That afternoon, I made the trip to the county clerk's office, a place that felt like a relic from another era, filled with dusty binders and the hushed whispers of bureaucracy. I presented my property's parcel number and the original deed, explaining my inquiry about the access road. The clerk, a kind woman with an encyclopedic knowledge of local land history, pointed me towards a series of large, bound volumes labeled Easements and Rights of Way. Hours melted away as I meticulously scanned through pages, cross-referencing dates, names, and property descriptions. I traced the lineage of my property back through several owners, each transaction hinting at the road's history. And then, there it was. Not a hidden secret, but a perfectly clear, legally binding document, dated decades ago, explicitly establishing an exclusive and perpetual easement for access to my parcel, specifically describing the very road Karen now claimed as her own. My eyes traced the precise dimensions, the detailed plat map, and the unequivocal language. This easement granted. The owner of my parcel, me, full unobstructed right of passage. The wording was airtight, leaving no room for ambiguity. It wasn't just a right-of-way, it was literally a part of my property's legal framework, owned by the person who owned the land it served. The aha moment wasn't a sudden jolt, but a slow, building wave of vindication that washed over me. It was like piecing together a complex puzzle and finally seeing the complete picture. The puzzle pieces weren't just the legal jargon, they were also Karen's previous interactions. In hindsight, her casual waves had always felt a little strained, her glances a little too sharp. This wasn't a new issue for her. She just hadn't found the right target until now. In the days that followed my discovery, armed with printed copies of deeds, the easement document, and the official county map, Karen's harassment, far from diminishing, only seemed to intensify, fueled by my perceived retreat from our first clash. She clearly saw my backing down as a victory, an admission of guilt on my part. Now, instead of just blocking the road, her actions became a series of escalating, petty annoyances. The once empty parcel now hummed with purpose, a testament to hard work and, perhaps more importantly, the triumph of fact over fiction. Karen's open acts of obstruction had long ceased, but she couldn't resist one last, desperate attempt to assert her rapidly eroding authority. One crisp autumn morning, a formal-looking letter arrived in my mailbox, emblazoned with a local law firm's letterhead. My heart gave a tiny lurch. Had she actually managed to find legal grounds? I tore it open to find a rambling, "Poorly," Worded notice drafted by a bottom-tier attorney alleging nuisance, excessive noise, and unapproved commercial activity due to my workshop construction. It was vague, generic, and completely devoid of any specific legal basis. The letter also included a laughable demand for financial compensation for her distress. It was clear Karen had managed to convince some inexperienced lawyer to send a boilerplate threat, likely after embellishing her grievances. I didn't even bother to respond. Instead, I simply forwarded the letter, along with all my meticulously organized easement documents, property deeds, and even a copy of the county's zoning regulations, to my own attorney. A polite one-page letter from my lawyer citing the perpetual easement, the legal right to build a workshop on my zoned property, and a subtle mention of potential counterclaims for harassment if Karen persisted, was dispatched. The response from Karen's lawyer was swift. A curt, embarrassed email stating they would no longer represent her in this matter. It was a final, pathetic whimper in what Karen had envisioned as a roaring legal battle, and for me, it was the definitive end of her formal challenges. From that day forward, the road to my workshop remained truly and perpetually clear. Karen, now thoroughly and publicly defeated, retreated into the confines of her property. Her red SUV stayed parked firmly in her driveway, never again daring to block the easement. I still saw her occasionally, glimpsed through her window or tending to her garden, but her once fiery gaze was now a subdued, almost haunted stare. She no longer even bothered with the petty annoyances. The painted rocks never reappeared, nor did any more suspiciously discarded shrubs. The conflict, in its active form, was over. The physical access was secured, and more importantly, the emotional burden of the dispute had lifted entirely. My workshop became a thriving reality, a space where I could pursue my passions without the constant anxiety of a neighbor's misplaced entitlement. The regular hum of saws and drills, the occasional delivery of materials, all proceeded without incident. The neighbors who had quietly supported me continued their friendly waves and nods, a silent acknowledgement of the peace that had settled over our small corner of the community. For them, it was likely a relief to no longer witness Karen's erratic behavior spill onto the shared space. This entire experience, frustrating as it was at times, taught me invaluable lessons that extended far beyond property lines. The most significant takeaway was the power of meticulous documentation and knowing your rights. In a world often driven by perception and opinion, cold, hard facts backed by legal documents are the ultimate arbiters of truth. Karen operated on assumptions and a sense of entitlement, but her beliefs crumbled in the face of verifiable evidence. This underscored the importance of due diligence, not just in property acquisition, but in every significant decision. Always verify, always research, and always understand the underlying legalities. It also taught me the virtue of patience and strategic calm in the face of baseless aggression. My initial instinct might have been to argue, to yell back, to engage in a shouting match. But by taking a step back, researching the facts, and then presenting them calmly and definitively, I disarmed Karen far more effectively than any heated argument could have. Her emotional outburst was met with legal logic, leaving her with no ground to stand on. This approach of letting facts speak louder than anger proved to be the most potent weapon. Furthermore, the experience illuminated the complexities of neighborly dynamics and the concept of community. While Karen represented the extreme end of misguided entitlement, the quiet support from other neighbors showed that most people value harmony and fair play. It highlighted that sometimes standing up for your own rights, even when it's uncomfortable, can ultimately benefit the wider community by establishing clear boundaries and discouraging disruptive behavior. It was a reminder that while you might not choose your neighbors, you can choose how you interact with them, and when to firmly assert your legal standing. So, what's the broader message for you, the audience from this whole ordeal. It's simple, yet profoundly important. Don't let unsubstantiated claims or the baseless aggression of others deter you from your lawful pursuits. Whether it's a property line dispute, a business challenge, or even a personal conflict, always arm yourself with facts. Do your homework. Understand the rules. And when you have the truth on your side, present it calmly, confidently, and unequivocally. Karen thought she had the upper hand because she believed she was right, but belief doesn't alter reality. Reality is defined by documents, by laws, and by verifiable truths. Your perseverance, your commitment to understanding the facts, and your refusal to be intimidated are your strongest assets. My private road is clear, my workshop stands tall, and the peace I now enjoy is not just the absence of conflict, but the profound satisfaction of knowing I stood my ground, justly and legally. May your own paths always be as clear